So welcome to class, everybody. I'm going to share my screen as usual. Here are the class notes. And of course, this is our last Zoom class. We'll take a look at one essay today, just to refresh everybody's idea about what they're doing for essay number 3. And of course, there is a discussion board. It'd be great for you to put something up there so you can get those points in your grade. Again, this is our last class, no class on Thursday. And I'm saying that the first draft of essay number 3 is due today, but you really have a few days to do that. But this Tuesday, the 14th, Valentine's Day, is absolutely the last day of class. So certainly the second draft of essay number 3 has to be done, even if you get the first draft down here on Thursday. We still need the second draft on the 14th. Can't take any papers after that. So anybody who owes me anything, some of you maybe not here right now, but who'll be listening to this recording, might owe me a different essay number 2, as well as essay number 3. So please hand that in if it's you. Okay, so we have more people here. Very good. So anybody have any questions about what to do when, or what you have to do, what's left to do for the class, anything like that? Okay, so let's take a look at one more essay. Here we are. It's coming up. Okay, on human rights. And just to review, this is the essay number 3. Human rights are basic rights and freedoms that belong to everyone in the world from birth until death. Absolutely correct statement about human rights. And let me just show you, here's the MLA style heading. The only thing that's missing from here is the class. So you'd want to make sure you put the class there. And then we're supposed to have in here also the header, which would give us the page numbers. You get that by insert, and then header, page numbers, header, here it is, insert page number, you put header, and it's coming up slowly. Let's just do insert page numbers here. Page number, format to page number. I want it on the right. Start at page 1, and I want it on the upper right. It's not asking me of that now, so I will put that in there so it's not to confuse you here. Here we are. So try to put the header in, try to put the page number in there. It's giving me a bit of a hard time now, so I'm just not going to do it. So let's go back to the essay. Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that belong to every person in the world from birth until death. They apply regardless of where one is from, what one believes, or how one chooses to live their life. Very good. And that's that singular use of the word they, which we allow these days. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a document that acts, and the student had written, like a global roadmap for freedom and equality, protecting the rights of every individual everywhere. And I changed that like to the word as, because we want to save that like for preference. I like chocolate, I like vanilla, and we can use the word as or acts similar to. Another way to change that would have been to say similar to. So it's the concept of similarity. It was the first time countries agreed on freedoms and rights that deserve universal protection in order for every individual to live their lives freely and with dignity. Again, there's that singular use of that they in there. Very good, very good. The UDHR, which is of course the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and which you can do sometimes, UDHR, is put that abbreviation in right after the first time that you say the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and then it's okay to use that abbreviation. She put the periods in like that. And then you can use that abbreviation in your essay if you don't want to keep writing the full title. The UDHR was adopted by the newly established United Nations on December 10th, 1948, in response to, and then she quotes, the barbarous act which outraged the conscience of mankind during the Second World War. Now, you notice there's a quote here. And because there's a quote here, really, I'm going to say cite the source. The source should be cited here. Now, let's just take a quick look at the works cited. And here it is, which is actually not in very good shape. So I certainly put this information in there, use the MLA formatting, go here for assistance. There's the Purdue OWL. But let's take a look what she has here. Here's a source here, and it's not clear. You see how it's not clear as to whether this URL is related to this title or is related to this title, or if these are separate sources or they're the same source. It's just not clear from the way it's formatted. That's why we need to use the standard formatting so that it's clear to users like us what the source is and where it comes from. Here's another source. And again, we're not sure if these are 3 different sources here or what. And here's yet another source and yet another source. This one is pretty clear and is done in the proper fashion, almost. You would also want to put the date it was accessed in here. Something like that. Oops. Oh, well. Oops. Can't get it in there without coming down here. Okay. And just put, then if I put it over there. So we would need to add the date access. So this work cited needs some work in order for us to understand what these sources are. And let's go back up to the top of the essay. One of those sources is the one that gave this quote, probably the preamble to the Universal Declaration, but we don't know. And so you see how important it is both to cite the source, so you know where the source came from, and to have the proper formatting in the work cited, so whoever's reading it can make some sense out of it and can understand which source is being quoted. Its adoption recognized human rights to be the foundation, I guess it's supposed to be the foundation of justice and peace. So I just want to mention to you that proofreading is one of those skills and one of those steps that you need to take when you do this kind of submission, because when you proofread, you read each sentence over again, like this one, and you can see when you've left out a word or put something in that doesn't belong there. So proofreading is an important step. When you hand in longer papers, research papers for other classes in the future, you will definitely want to make sure you proofread carefully. It can be tedious. Sometimes you're rushing to get your essay in at the last minute, and you don't feel you have time to do that, but proofreading is always, always important. People, I especially, always find errors that I've made when I'm proofreading. I can think it's great, and my essay is great, but then I'll go back and proofread it slowly and carefully and look for spelling and grammar and other things like that. And I'm undoubtedly going to find 1 or 2, because we're human, we make mistakes, and proofreading is our way of looking for those errors and correcting those errors. So really try to proofread. The Declaration outlines 30 rights and freedoms that belong to all of us and that nobody can take away from us. Absolutely true. And here you can see the first person being used, and really we should have the third person. It should say belong to all people and cannot be taken away from anyone. For example, that's what we want to see in here rather than that first person pronoun. The rights that were included continue to form the basis for international human rights law. Yes. Today, the Declaration remains a living document. It's a very nice concept, the living document. It's not novel for this essay, but it's a nice concept, meaning that it changes, it can adapt to the times, and it can be used in life. Nice idea. It is the most translated document in the world. Out of the 30 rights and freedoms, 4 of them will be explained in depth. That's really reason for this to be in parenthesis. It's not really an aside, it's definitely part of the essay. Also, here's a fact. It's the most translated document of the world. It would be nice to cite that source as well, because when you make a statement of fact like this, you make it for a reason. You want your reader to be impressed by it, or to pay attention to it, or to consider it as the truth. And the only way we can really consider a fact as a truth is if that fact is cited in some way. So for sure, if you make a statement like this, which is undoubtedly true, I'm not doubting the truth. I'm just saying we should cite the source there. All human beings are free and equal. All human beings are born free and equal with dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another. This sounds a lot to me like a quote from the human rights. So I'm just going to say, is this a quote? And if it is a quote, then you would want to put the quotation marks around it and then cite the source. An example of this would be that they have the right to life, the right to a fair trial, freedom from torture and other cruel and inhumane treatment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to health, education, and an adequate standard of living. Well, these are examples, right? This is not one example, but examples. This is plural. Examples of this. So you would definitely want to use the plural here rather than now. This is what happens when you're writing. When you're writing, you say to yourself, oh, I'm going to give an example. So you start the sentence with an example. But then, of course, you give more than one example. When you proofread and you go back over it, you can say, oh, I meant to give one example. I gave several examples, so I need the plural. And that's that proofreading function. Once again, that's really useful. An explanation of this example, and of course, here it says this example, meaning an example, but all right, so something needs to be coordinated here, would be that nobody, including the government, can try to end your life. So once again, here's the second person, and we want the third person. So I'm going to scoot up here and just write in here, third person only. So if you see that on your essay, you'll know that somewhere in the essay, you've used first person, second person, where it shouldn't be used. Most of the time, and this is one of those introductory statements, so it takes a comma, most of the time, torture evokes physical suffering, such as beatings or electrical shocks, and sexual abuse, such as rape and humiliation. Okay. Freedom of speech means one can speak, write, and share opinions without punishment from the government. Yes. Freedom of religion is that everyone in the U.S. has the right to practice his or her own religion or no religion at all. Actually, in the case of the Universal Declaration, it means everyone in the world, because the Declaration is for all human beings, not just the United States. The right to a fair trial means that defendants are guaranteed a public trial without unnecessary delay. The right to a lawyer, the right to an impartial jury, and the right to know your accusers and the nature of the charges and evidence against an individual. So, of course, there's that second person. This is charges, not chargers. That. Again, that's the proofreading. Sometimes, as you well know, the computer will change the words that you're writing and make that autocorrect for you. Only sometimes the computer is not correct when it does the autocorrect. So you need to make sure that all the words are correct. You're responsible for that. So you need to proofread. The right to health means that everyone should have access to health services they need when and where they need them without suffering financial hardship. And this is supposed to see, here's again, this is supposed to be the right to an education, but you notice that word was left out. Proofreading, once again, be careful. So I'm going to scoot back up here and say proofread carefully. Again, if you see that on your essay, you'll know that I found a lot of these little things that you usually catch when you proofread. Okay. The right to education means that all children living in the United States have the right to a free public education. The Constitution requires that all children be given equal educational opportunity, no matter what their race, ethnic background, rich, poor, non-citizens. Now you notice I changed the no matter. The no matter, or the no matter what, is a very informal way of saying regardless of. So I changed that there, but here it's not the Constitution, right? That's from another essay that we used, right? This is the Declaration. So we want to put in the right idea, the right document here. One could even put in the UDHR, right? Because we established that that was going to be the way to refer to the document in this essay. And right here, they did. So we go down here, you could put in UDHR if you want, instead of declaration. An adequate standard of living for the health and well-being of himself and his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness. And so some of this, again, seems as if it's a quote from the document itself. In any case, it's this, even though there's a lot of words there, it's not actually a sentence. There's no verb in there. And all right, and is part of it a quote? Okay. Sure. What you don't want is you don't want your readers to be confused about what you've written, to not be sure about what you've written, is to suspect that some of it is a quote and it's not been quoted, things of that nature. So you want to make sure that you quote, when you do use words that are from a document or some other source that you've used, you found, that you quote it properly. Give credit where credit is due. That's the right thing to do, proper scholarship, and it's good scholarship. The other thing, so let's assume part of this is a quote and it'll be fixed. It's important to have the right that all human beings are free and equal, because it ensures that every individual, and so here the word missing is has. You see how proofreading in this case would have helped a lot to improve this essay? Has an equal opportunity to make the most of their lives and talents, and believing that no one should have this one is all probably a run-on, and you probably need a new sentence here, where that and is, because I think that this expresses a slightly different idea. So that needs a little work right there. No discrimination. Now, some of you have been doing this in your essays. This is almost as if it's a title to the section. And this part you really don't need. It's not a sentence in and of itself. Let's see what happened at the beginning of this one. Oh, no. Okay, so it's just the first time. So that's not really a sentence, that no discrimination, and probably should be omitted there. Just leave it out. And then you have the sentence. Everybody is entitled to freedoms without distinction of any kind, such as race, language, religion, political or other opinion, national, social origin, property, birth, or status. Once again, the question is this a quote? That's the concept there. We want to make sure if it's a quote, we put quotation marks around it. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of all these. So here again, is all of this a quote? Right? These two sentences seem like they could be directly from the Declaration. An example of this right of no discrimination is having a non-discrimination statement. Okay, a non-discrimination statement states that discrimination based on color, sex, religion, including pregnancy, sexual orientation, disability, age, or genetic information, including family history, is illegal and will not be tolerated. Okay. An explanation of this example is that the rights of equal treatment requires that all persons be treated equally before law without discrimination. Sure, before the law, I suppose, without discrimination. Okay. The principle of equality and non-discrimination guarantees that those in equal circumstances are dealt with equally. And this is probably supposed to be in the law and practice. So once again, proofreading. I know you got the message. It's important to have the right of no discrimination because discrimination strikes at the heart of every human being. Yes, it is harming someone's rights simply because of who they are and what they believe. Absolutely. But this one needs to be whom, because there's that preposition in front of it. I know that's not the way most people speak, and I know eventually that won't be the case, but it's still true that when you have that preposition, you need the whom. Discrimination is harmful and perpetuates inequality. Absolutely. Here's that right to life. Once again, better to leave this out. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. It's not of person, just security of person. And of course, this is a quote. I remember that. That's Article 2. So once again, we want to make sure that if it's a quote, quotation marks are used. I think, except for the word it's pretty much what it says in Article 2 of the Declaration. An example of this right is that an obligation should be put on states to take steps to protect the lives of individuals. Yes. Examples include positive measures to address threats to life, such as, and then you put a comma here, oops, put a comma here, such as, and a comma here, malnutrition and infant mortality. An explanation of this right is the right to life is, and sometimes it's more clear if you put the word that in there. An explanation of this right is that the right to life entails the right not to be deprived of life arbitrarily or unlawfully by the country or its agents. The right to life is important because the government exists to protect our natural rights, and of course, people's natural rights, and has a duty to protect the weak from the strong. We all benefit when the law respects the dignity and value of human rights. So again, here's that first person that needs to be changed to third person. The government should protect the right to life because it's the foundation to all other liberties. Good. And then here's that no slavery. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. This is again a quote. I remember that one as well. So I know that one's a quote. An example of the freedom of slavery is during and after the Civil War, Americans would end slavery constitutionally. Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation as a war measure, and the 13th Amendment ended slavery in the United States forever. Slavery could not survive in a nation half slave and half free, but it could also not endure in a nation founded on the natural rights of liberty and equality in the constitutional republic provided by the Declaration of Independence. An explanation of this example is that from the first days of the Civil War, enslaved people had acted to secure their own liberty. The Emancipation Proclamation confirmed their insistence that the war for the Union must become a war for freedom. It added a moral force to the Union and strengthened the Union both militarily and politically. As a milestone along the road to slavery's final destruction, the Emancipation Proclamation has assumed a place among the great documents of human freedom. Of course, this UDHR was written in 1948, 100 years after the Civil War. So the example of the Civil War is interesting and it's valid, but really this example no slavery should be talking about the kind of slavery that exists at 1948 or up to 1948, or even today, which we use the term human trafficking for. So a human trafficking example would have served better here, but this is okay. The right of no slavery is important because the 13th Amendment of the Constitution provides, and then here's a quote, very good. With the adoption of the 13th Amendment, the United States found a final constitutional solution to the issue of slavery. This really should be capitalized. So should the one up above. The 13th Amendment, along with the 14th and 15th Amendment, is a trio of Civil War amendments that greatly expanded the civil rights. Really, so they are a trio because it's plural. There's three of them after all. That's that proofreading again. In conclusion, one can see upon reading this essay how human rights are so important to the human race. Now, you really don't need this part, right? This part's really not necessary. In conclusion, I'm sorry, one can see this part is okay. You just don't need upon reading the essay. One can see how human rights are so important to the human race. Absolutely. Not only do we have the Bill of Rights, but that's in the United States. We have the Declaration of Human Rights, which has outlined 30 rights and freedoms for us to benefit. And you don't want to end the sentence with a preposition. In this case, you could just cross it out, but sometimes you have to move it back into the sentence in order to make it sense. And if it warrants, because here you need the subjunctive tense, for doubt, if it warrants, whenever you say if, you're expressing doubt, and therefore you need the subjunctive tense. If it warrant for these rights and freedoms, people all over the world may not survive. Lucky us, we have human rights. Okay, this especially is a little informal, and the whole idea of human rights is not that people are lucky, but rather that this is part and parcel of the concept of humanity. And so that this makes it a little, deflates the significance of the essay a little bit by ending on this informal note. Personally, I would just leave it out. And here, people all over the world may not survive. Well, certainly they couldn't experience freedom and justice. The word justice here might serve really well. The concept of justice in here might be a good thing to refer to, since that's really what we would be saying. Okay. And then just remember, here, this works cited needs to be fixed, right? We need to have those cited works in the proper format. Okay, let me stop that share, see who's here. Okay, everybody, glad to see you all. That's I know that I've gotten essay number 3 from some of you, and let's just bring up the class notes again and go over them. Okay, so if you owe me, some of you might owe me essay number 2. You might not have given that to me yet. That's a good idea to do that sooner rather than later. We only have a week left of time to submit any essays. So if you haven't given me the essay number 3 draft number 1, try to do that by Thursday, and I will certainly turn it around as fast as I can. But this is the absolute last date that I can take any essays from you. Essay number 3, draft 2, final day is going to be February 14th, Valentine's Day. So for sure, get your essay drafts in. Okay. Anybody have any questions about what they need to do individually? You can always text me, call me, or email me if you need some help getting your act together for the end of the term. Yes. No, some places, maybe I thought there was a quote and it wasn't a quote, but you'll fix that in the essay. Okay. Anybody? Questions, issues, concerns? This is us.
Yes, Professor, I have a question. So if today is our last class, does mean we finish or we need to do some exam, something
If you've done
else?
essay number 3 is the last piece of work. So
Okay, Professor, I'm working in my worksheet because this is my problem. So I try to understand why you tell me that I need to fix it. When I finish, I'll send you it again.
okay.
And then when we can see our rate.
So if you send me, yes, I see. I sent it back to you. Revise that essay and send it back to me, and I'll help you with your grade. I'll give you a grade.
Okay, Professor. Thank you so much for everything.
Okay, just one more submission. Okay. Anybody else? Issues? As I said, you can always contact me. This is our last Zoom class. You have 7 days to get the rest of the essays in. So if you do owe me something, please get them in. There's no incompletes in this class. Okay, everybody. It was great having you as students. It was a wonderful class. And I'll expect those essays to come on in. Have a good night.
Thanks to you,
Thank you,
Professor, for
Professor.
everything.
Good night.
Was a pleasure to meet you.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Good night. Thank you.
Yes. Stay there, Nicole. I sent you that message there. No final exam. I'm just using that third essay as the final exam. No final. Whoop. That should have gone to everybody. Okay, anybody else? Everybody good? I'm going to end the class for everybody.